What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about this Netflix Warner Bros. Situation. Now, I'm mainly going to be talking about the gaming side, heavily a gaming channel, although I care about the movies, and in fact, it actually only, I think, worsens when I think about the movies. I get very worried about having 30 times the DC films, to oversaturate them, to make them far worse, and to throw them all on Netflix after they're out in theaters for 10 days. You know, the guy who runs Netflix is, canonically, if you remember his story, he talks about, remember the Barbie Oppenheimer thing? He talks about how he thought that those two movies could have been equally as big and that movement could have been as big on Netflix. So this is a guy that loves things on streaming, doesn't really see future for theaters, and he doesn't understand that people would actually go out and to watch these things. So there's all of that to this as well. And granted, I think a lot of it is very bad. In terms of the games, though, I really want to focus on the gaming side of things. I do think this is a very, very bad situation. There is one line from David Zaslav I want to read. It's the only line of positivity that I saw. And, you know, it mentions the gaming division, and a lot of this stuff has not mentioned the gaming division. You know, when this was going through, the gaming division, I don't even think was brought up. And when Netflix did the slideshow, you know, this morning where they talked about it, I think they had the gaming side of things on like one frame, one slide. And they did an interview, I think specifically with a gaming outlet, and they did talk about that, okay, the gaming side is coming along, is going with them. Now, Netflix has not been kind to games. Netflix shut down, I think, their biggest AAA game, really the only AAA big gaming studio they had. They shut it down. They've talked about in the past that they actually think it's quite risky to do games of that size. And guess what? You have companies like Rocksteady, like WB Montreal, like Traveler's Tales, like Avalanche. All of these companies do games in that same scope. So going to a studio or a company that does not like to take risks on gaming, and then you're giving them all of these studios, like 8 to 10 of them in all, by the way, very scary. And we'll go to my tweet here, but it's, quote tweeting the real one. So Zaslav told staff that the company's pending sale to Netflix is unlikely to lead to sweeping layoffs, as the streaming service's intention is that they want to keep most people because they don't have a lot. I understand that the last couple of weeks have been disruptive, and it's tough to read about every day. And where we are going to end up in the idea of coming together with another company, there are going to be some trepidation. I understand that, but it is a good fit. The intention is that they want to keep most people because they don't have a lot. They don't have a motion picture studio. They don't have a big gaming business. And so it feels very good for our employees. Now, I want to say this. You know, a lot of corporate talk is just that. It's corporate talk. It's kind of BS. When they sell these things and they make their billion, 82 or 84 or whatever is $1 billion, they're doing it for their shareholders. When they do the announcement, they start out with the consumers. They start out by talking about how great it's going to be that all of these properties are here and how we're going to leverage them to make great content for us. The next thing they say is making shareholders money. And when they make these decisions, all they're thinking about is the shareholders and their money. And I want that to be clear because that is the best quote. It's the only good quote that came out of his mouth and has come out of this entire situation. But even the best quote, I think, is still rooted in a little bit of manipulation. You know, of course, you're going to say stuff like that. You made your shareholders very wealthy. That's a good sign, I would say, specifically the gaming part, because it's the only time it's brought up. You know, he literally mentions they don't have a gaming department like this, and now they're going to get one. And I would like to believe that. And look, maybe the optimist in me is going to believe it because I don't want to believe. I think it can get very dark very quickly. You know, these studios being absorbed in Netflix, what does Netflix do with them? They could look at, you're really doing like this self-evaluation process or just an evaluation process on all these different studios. Now, I've said in tweets, throughout today when we've learned about this, I think a studio like Avalanche should be safe. You know, you have Hogwarts Legacy, and it was so successful, and I think they're always going to be very thankful that they made that game for a lot of different reasons. But in this way, can you really touch them? Can you really mess with it, meddle with them? Why would you want to? This is a studio that, is it still risky? I mean, their games probably cost a lot of money. Hogwarts Legacy 2 is going to cost 100, 150, 200 million dollars. Like, it's going to cost a lot. But if the game sells 25 to 35 million units, it's going to make you billions with a B, right? It's going to easily offset this scary thing. Are all of them like that, though? The answer is no. Rocksteady is far more shaky. Did they even deserve a second chance in the first place? You could argue. I think they should. I think they should be allowed to rebound, but you never know. They were given that chance, and now they're going to have to be given that chance by new bosses, people that weren't originally in control. WB Montreal, what are you up to? Gotham Knights sold well. We've learned that over time. Gotham Knights did do well. But okay, it's been quite a while. You're actually 3+ years out from it. Where's your next game? How's things going? And then how expensive are your games? Should you be worried or not, right? Like I said, Traveler's Tale, TT Games with Lego, I think those are always safe bets. Those are always going to make you money. NetherRealm, you got Mortal Kombat, Injustice, things like that. The one thing also to throw in during this part of the video, so technically, the DC part still resides with DC. So this is a situation where you're having these things absorbed, and then the DC part, so say, maybe not originally, because maybe Rocksteady's already working on a Batman game, right? But say, okay, WB Montreal releases a game during this, and then they want to do their next game, and Netflix has them. They have to go to the DC department of whatever is left, right? The ruins of hell. They have to walk through it and say, hey, can we license out the DC side of things? We want to make a Teen Titans game, Can we do that? So you have to still do that. That still happens. And I think DC might be the only part of it, because I think Harry Potter, the whole thing moves over. Going to be interesting with the TV show as well as the games. But I think specifically with DC, I think that's still separated. That might not be right. We'll obviously find out. I think a lot of these things are going to be answered from us. But, that's, to me, that's the scary thing, is none of them are safe. None of them are safe. But some of them are more safe than others, right? I think we can all agree on that. Avalanche is more safe than Rocksteady. Avalanche is more safe than WB Montreal. I would say, again, Traveler's Tales and NetherRealm. NetherRealm is a big studio. You're making Mortal Kombat movies. The first one did pretty well. Second one's expected to make them money. You're probably happy with a couple of these studios. The issue is WB Games has 8 to 10 studios, and you're getting all of them, and only 3, 4 are good bets. Good bets. The rest of them are iffy. And here's the thing. I'm okay with iffy studio. This is not Alex talking. I'm talking as if I'm freaking Netflix, because I guess we have to do that now. I'm okay having studios that shoot at a 50% rate. It's not ideal, but you hit one, you miss. And not all studios are uber talented. They can always make killer games. Some, go through great stretches and then go through bad stretches. I believe in the ability of letting them figure it out, having bounce backs, allowing bounce backs to even happen. Does Netflix? This is me talking. Does Netflix allow that? I don't know. Netflix shut down a studio. Netflix doesn't even like games. They tried to get into it. They failed. It didn't really work. They are opposed really to this medium to high AAA spending, which, look, technically, is that all that bad? No, games should be cheaper. And if they're coming at this from an angle of, hey, we want you to keep making these games, Rocksteady, don't go over $100 million. And Rocksteady has to figure it out. I'm not actually going to throw Netflix under the bus for that, if that happens, right? Because it's hey, if you allow them to make games, but you're just you're reducing the budget, you got to make things work at different levels. Okay, I think that's going to happen to a lot of studios over the next 5 years. It kind of has to happen, right? But if you're not going to allow it to happen, then the whole thing's going to fall apart, And that's where the good positive quote kind of comes in. Netflix doesn't have anything like this, and now they're going to. And all they need to do is, they need to establish themselves. They're going to have control over it. So you don't really expect them to just say, okay, everybody keep on keeping on like you were. We're not going to look at you. We're not going to speak to you. We're not going to touch you. That's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. They're going to set up their own stuff. I think after that, and you kind of establish the rules and the mindset of your company, then you kind of let them, don't meddle with it too much. Some studios need more meddling than others. Some maybe need a push. But, if you're going to Avalanche to suggest or demand how Hogwarts Legacy 2 should be, you better get the F out of there. That's not your place. And it shouldn't be WB Games' place either. Now, maybe you're more selective on Rocksteady. Maybe you're trying to keep a better eye on them so that they don't make another Suicide Squad game. Fair. Fair. Like, there's really not a good argument against that, right? How you do it, like, you don't fire everybody. You maybe try to, like, contain it and figure out how you can make a better game. And just different ways of handling that situation. You know, we don't know how they're going to do it. So I'm worried. I'm definitely worried because I do think at best, it's just not as bad as I think it is. You know, does that make sense? Like, whenever we see these kind of purchases, how many times do we need to see it? We know that when big studios buy big studios, one thing happens no matter what, and it's called layoffs. Every time studios get shut down, people lose their jobs. Some maybe were going to eventually, like some maybe had it coming. Most times you hope for rebounds. Most times maybe you should have just let them continue and hope it works out, right? So that's kind of how I look at it, is it's going to happen. You're going to have layoffs. These companies are going to have problems. You might have some games canceled. Like, things like that are going to happen. So I guess it's just, how bad is it going to get? Like, is that kind of where we end it? Because then, all right, I guess it's just, you know, the effects of the beast. Like, this is just what happens in the world. There's nothing you and I can do about Netflix buying WB. It's not up to us. You know what I mean? So it's either that or it gets really bad where they shut down 5 of the 10 studios and only 5 are left, and they have to make certain games, and it's all streaming. Physical releases are dead. The WB's the first one to not do any game going forward coming out on a disc. You know, like, things like that is where it gets, like, diabolical, like, just terrible, where you don't want to even be a part of it anymore. It can get that bad. It can. Netflix is capable of that. Hopefully they're not. Hopefully they will, you know, kind of ease into it and, you know, allow these games. That's, I guess, maybe the final thing I'll say. I think for now, a lot of them would be safe. You know, if you're working on a game, you work on it as fast as you possibly can, you know, because the deal is not going to go through for a while. I don't think this means that a DC game shut down if you're working on a Batman game, say you're Rocksteady. I don't think this sale means stop working on it, we're canceling it. I think you continue. I think anybody continues, and that should be the mentality. I would want it to be the mentality, and kind of take it from there. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.